Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of The Hype Show. Another episode of The Hype Show. It's been a while since I've been with you guys, but I appreciate you joining me. I am Big J all day, aka the Mighty Big J, and this is episode 4. Episode 4 of The Hype Show. Again, it's been about 5 days. I didn't broadcast on Sunday, but I'm broadcasting with you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do me a favor, make sure to log, comment, and subscribe on this video as well. Definitely helps the algorithm and the channel out now. Appreciate that very much here. Let's just get right into it. There was a lot of NFL action. We're going to start with covering the Thursday night football game that occurred about 5 days ago last week to kick off week 2 of the season here. That was between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings. The Philadelphia Eagles were victorious in that game. 34-28 was the final score. Looking at the stats and the statistics here for that, let's start with the passing here. Jalen Hurts was 18 of 23 for 193 yards. He threw 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Also ran for 12 carries for 35 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. So we had 3 total touchdowns to go along with an interception, and basically did what he needed to do as far as passing the ball and running the football. So a great night for him. Kirk Cousins, he was 31 of 44 for 364 yards and 4 touchdowns in the loss. Kirk Cousins, between 2 games, has put up some major numbers, but they haven't been able to come away with the victory. So that's kind of interesting. We'll definitely discuss that here. Looking at the rushing for both teams, Philadelphia was led by DeAndre Swift with 28 carries for 175 yards and a touchdown. He definitely got busy on the ground. Boston Scott also added 5 carries for 40 yards as well. They were dominant on the ground and through the air as well. Looking at Minnesota's rushing statistics, Alexander Mattison, he only had 8 carries for 28 yards. He's definitely having a rough start here with those first 2 games here. I definitely touched on him a bit to start the season. With Alexander Mattison stepping into that role for Dalvin Cook, there's going to be a lot more expected of him as the starting running back, and it just hasn't worked out quite yet as far as his production. He'll definitely be looking to get that going, but they're definitely going to need him. On the receiving aspect here for the Philadelphia Eagles, Devontae Smith led all receivers for them with 4 catches for 131 yards and a touchdown. He definitely got busy. A.J. Brown, 4 catches, 29 yards, and tight end Dallas Goedert, 6 catches for 22 yards. Regarding A.J. Brown, there was something that was caught on the sidelines during the telecast of him and Jalen Hurts kind of getting into it a little bit as far as the amount of targets he was receiving. Smith definitely kind of was the man pretty much for that team the first 2 games here. And A.J. Brown, he's looking to get more, obviously. With that offense, there's a little bit of everything to spread around as far as the personnel you have. But I think the issue is that A.J. Brown hasn't gotten a lot of targets yet. And the coach Nick Sirianni, he said it's pretty normal for that to happen. Obviously, from the outside looking in, it looks like an argument to us. But obviously, he's saying that it's pretty normal for the wide receiver to want more and to kind of come to the quarterback as far as that goes. So we'll definitely have to see how that plays out as far as their connection. Hurts to Smith has looked good through 2 games, but as Hurts to A.J. Brown, they're still working on that. They've won both of their games so far, so that's fine. That definitely helps. But also keep in mind the Commanders and the Cowboys have won their games too. We'll get into those scores for those teams later. But as far as Philadelphia, that's definitely something they're going to want to figure out as far as the balance of that offense. I'm looking at Minnesota on the flip side. Justin Jefferson, he had 11 catches for 159 yards, but he didn't find the end zone. Jordan Addison, the rookie out of USC, he had 3 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. And also tight end TJ Hawkinson, he had 7 catches for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they definitely got busy there. Again, Kirk Cousins threw 4 touchdowns in total. To the Hawkinson got 2 of them. TJ Hawkinson, he's definitely looked like the better tight end so far. That's, again, only 2 games. Travis Kelce obviously didn't play week 1, but leading the pack so far is TJ Hawkinson as far as I'm concerned as far as tight ends. That was definitely a huge pickup for them from Detroit, ironically, in their division. So definitely liking that combination. He was with them for about half the season last year. I think he was traded about week 5 of the 2022 season. So he's with them roughly half, 2/3 of the season. And then the 2 games so far, him and Cousins have hooked up really well. Justin Jefferson, he didn't find the end zone again. This was another situation where he has not found the end zone. He's definitely got the receiving yards and the catches, but just hasn't found the end zone yet. And again, in 2022, he had 6 touchdowns for over the course of that year. A lot of catches, a lot of receiving yards, but we're still looking for him to find the end zone more often. So that was definitely something that they're going to need. They're already off to an 0-2 start. And this team was 11-0 in one-score games last year, and that was a large part of why they were able to get their division win and get to the playoffs because they won a lot of the close games. They were able to get things done as they needed to. The Eagles, again, back to the Philadelphia Eagles, they looked much more prolific on offense, just 4 days removed from a Week 1 victory. On the ground and through the air, they got it done. Now, Devontae, of the 131 yards he had with the 4 catches, he had a 63-yard touchdown early in the game, and that's kind of what got things rolling for them. Again, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, they did have a shouting match due to Brian's involvement in the offense. He was targeted 6 times and had the 4 catches. But with an offense like that, spreading the ball around is going to be a challenge. Again, they're going to touch on this, and they're definitely going to try to get these kinks worked out, but it's going to be a challenge when you have this type of offense and this many weapons. Philadelphia does not play again until September 25th, Monday Night Football Week 3 at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. So that'll be their next tilt. That gives them about 11 days worth of rest, which is always key in the NFL. So that's definitely something they're going to need here. Looking at the Eagles' schedule beyond that Week 3 game, after they play Tampa, they're home against Washington that following Sunday, October 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern. They're at the Los Angeles Rams October 8th, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. And they're at the New York Jets, 4:25 p.m. Eastern at that point the following week after that. So at Tampa, with them having an 11-day turnaround at Tampa, that'll definitely give them enough time to get ready. But Tampa's looking pretty good so far. We'll definitely touch on them and the results that they had. But Tampa, so far, they're a 2-0 football team as well. So it's 2-0 football teams, and somebody has to win this bad boy unless they tie, of course. So at Tampa, I'll probably give you my prediction on Sunday on that one because Tampa's looking a lot better than we predicted. Again, Baker Mayfield is taking over for Tom Brady, so we weren't sure how that was going to work. But Mike Evans specifically is he's eating. He's looking good through 2 games. Versus Washington, that's another 2-0 football team. Their record will obviously be different by the time Week 4 comes around. And they've definitely shown that they can play some ball here as well. So that's going to be a game we'll touch on Sunday. At the Los Angeles Rams, October 8th, that's the Week 5 game for the Philadelphia Eagles. That team is also surprising people. They gave the 49ers a fight this past Sunday for their Week 2 loss. But in the previous game, people were expecting them to go up and get rolled by Seattle, and they're the ones that show that they can play. So the Rams team, they're definitely a wild card through 2 games. At the New York Jets, that's the only game I could see the Eagles winning right off the rip. That's 4 weeks away, so a lot can happen. There's just been things that have already happened in the first 2 weeks, so a lot can happen with this football team. But I can see the Eagles winning that game at the Jets. That Aaron Rodgers injury was a huge loss. Wrapping up their 5-game projection here is Sunday Night Football, October 22nd against the Miami Dolphins. That'll be their game Week 7. The Dolphins, they're right now, I know it's early, but right now they look like the best team in the AFC as far as consistency, as far as personnel. They're 2-0. They're home against the Broncos Week 3, and we'll talk about that game later on. But Miami looks to be the best team so far as just the 2 weeks we've seen. So Philadelphia, again, they're 2-0 right now. As far as the Minnesota Vikings, let's kind of take a look at the next 5 games for them and see what they're looking like here. 0-2, definitely a far cry from the start that they had in 2022 when they led that division pretty much wire to wire. So they're looking to bounce back here. They'll be hosting the Los Angeles Chargers September 24th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. That's their Week 3 matchup. Week 4, they're at the Carolina Panthers. That's also 1 p.m. Eastern on October 1st. And then Week 5, they will be home against the Kansas City Chiefs October 8th, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. October 15th, they have their actual first divisional game of the season, which is kind of strange, but they'll be at the Chicago Bears October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern. The following week, they're home against the San Francisco 49ers, which is actually Monday Night Football on October 23rd. And then 6 days later, that following Sunday, October 29th, they'll be at the Green Bay Packers, 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, they've started out 0-2, but looking at their next 5 games or so, they could if they can get back to a 500 football team, if they can win 4 of those games, that's pretty. That's a reach again because of the opponents that they have. But if they have any hope of getting back into the mix, 0-2 is tough, but 0-3 is almost impossible. So between the Chargers and Vikings, that's a must-win game because the Chargers are 0-2 as well, and we'll talk about them and their results over this past weekend. But yeah, that's going to be an eye. They're going to keep an eye on that game if you're the Vikings or the Chargers because at 0-3, it's impossible to get to the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl. So Minnesota, we'll definitely have to see what's going on with them and see if they can get things together. But 0-2 is not what they intended. And Alexander Madison, we'll just have to see if he can fill that spot for Dalvin Cook because at this point in time, it's not looking like it. But let's look at the other games here going into Sunday. That was the Thursday night football matchup we had last week. But going into Sunday, the first tilted games here. Looking at the next result here, the Atlanta Falcons, they were able to squeak by the Green Bay Packers at home, 25-24. Desmond Ridder, quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, was 19 of 32 for 237 yards. He threw 1 touchdown and 1 interception, and also added 10 carries for 39 yards and a touchdown as well. Jordan Love, quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, was 14 of 25 for 151 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was also, ironically, the second leading rusher for Green Bay at 2 carries for 23 yards. The starting running back, Aaron Jones, he was out for this game with a hamstring injury that he suffered week 1 against the Bears. So they definitely missed him here. Their leading rusher was A.J. Dillon, who's typically the backup for them. He had 15 carries for 55 yards. So they definitely missed Aaron Jones because Aaron Jones he's very capable in the running game and the passing game, which is pretty much what you have to be now these days for a running back. As far as I'm concerned here, the Green Bay Packers, to me, they missed Christian Watson as well. They didn't have him in the receiving end. So injuries happen in football, but when 2 of your guys that are important on the offensive side of the football aren't there, that's going to affect the team. And that's definitely what I saw with Green Bay as far as the continuity on offense. Looking at the receiving stats for this team here, Bijan Robinson, or let's go back to rushing actually. Bijan Robinson on the flip side, he had 19 carries for 128 yards. He didn't see the end zone, but he did catch the ball very well also. Tyler Algier, he had 16 carries for 48 yards as well. So Atlanta definitely dominated in the running game compared to what Green Bay was able to do for sure. And Bijan Robinson, the rookie, through 2 games, he's definitely an early candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year because he's showing right off the bat how versatile he can be with the ball, running and passing. So that's definitely a good thing for Atlanta with that pick there. The receiving statistics here. Drake London for the Atlanta Falcons, he had 6 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown. Mac Hollins, he also had 3 catches for 60 yards. And again, Bijan Robinson showing his versatility, 4 catches, 48 yards for the Atlanta Falcons. Looking at the receiving for the Green Bay Packers here, their leading receiver was Wicks with 2 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. And also looking at their other statistic here, Dobbs, he had 2 catches for 30 yards. Again, Christian Watson not being there, that definitely hurt them looking at their statistics as a team. There was also a point in the game here where Jordan Love, he kind of showed his novice a bit. There was a play, specifically in the third quarter, where they were trying to sneak, and he kind of got tripped over his own feet and accidentally fell into a couple of his linemen, and that actually caused them to get a false start penalty as a result of that. So that actually took away yardage and made things harder for them to convert. So that definitely hurt the Green Bay Packers in a way as far as the football as a whole. As far as Atlanta, they didn't look much better than they did week 1 against Carolina, but they did what they needed to do to get the win. Jordan Love, he had the better day statistically speaking than Desmond Ridder, but Desmond Ridder had more help. He had better receiving yards and better rushing yards as a whole for their offense. So that's the key for this football team here. Looking ahead, as far as the Atlanta Falcons, they're now 2-0 in their division. And looking ahead over their course of their next 5 games here, they're at Detroit September 24th here at 1 p.m. Eastern for their Week 3 game. We'll get into Detroit in a minute here, but I had some pretty heavy expectations for the Detroit Lions, and unfortunately, they kind of fell short against Seattle. We'll discuss that game a little bit later, but Atlanta will be 2-0 heading to Detroit on Sunday. The following week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's actually a game overseas. That'll be being played October 1st. It'll be 7:30 a.m. local time here, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. That game is actually being played in Wembley Stadium over in England. So that's going to be the first of a few international games that a lot of teams are going to be having here. The following week, they return home to host the Houston Texans. That's October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern. They're also staying home the following week to host the Washington Commanders, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Then they're at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for their Week 7 matchup, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern. After that, they are facing the Tennessee Titans, October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Um, the Atlanta Falcons, the NFC South is really interesting because 3 of the 4 teams are 2-0. The Atlanta Falcons, the Saints, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are all at 2-0, and Carolina is sitting at 0-2. This division as a whole was very tight, and it was also very mediocre last season. So I'm not. It's very early as far as predicting who's going to win this division, but the team that does the best within the division, I think, is the one that's going to take it. Um, the Saints, we'll talk about them in a moment. They with their victory over Carolina last night, and Tampa Bay. We'll also talk about them as well. This entire division, to me, still there's no definitive person that's going to win this division. There's no definitive team. It's the team that can play the most consistently and stay the healthiest. Plain and simple. That's what I see when I see the NFC South. So it's very hard to predict who's going to take over this division. But Atlanta has done a great job as far as keeping pace. They won their first divisional game last week, so they're 1-0 in the division. They're 2-0 as a whole, and they're also 2-0 in the conference. Conference games and divisional games are the most important as far as your wins. Your wins as a whole matter. Obviously, you want as many as possible. But winning within the division and winning within the conference is very important. So as far as that goes, Atlanta is off to a great start. Looking at the Green Bay Packers here, let's kind of look at their schedule here over the course of the next 5 games. They're 1-1 with their win over Chicago last week. They're hosting the New Orleans Saints, 1 p.m. Eastern, September 24th, excuse me. And then they turn around for, it looks like, a Thursday night football game on September 28th, hosting the Detroit Lions. Week 5, they're at the Las Vegas Raiders for Monday Night Football, October 9th. So that gives them an 11-day turnaround from that Thursday night game. Then they're at the Denver Broncos following their bye week, which will be Week 7, October 22nd at 4:25 Eastern Time. The following week, they're hosting the Minnesota Vikings, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th on Fox. The Green Bay Packers, looking at the game last week, again, I stated that I felt like it was just more of the same with the way that they beat the Chicago Bears. Their dominance over the Chicago Bears has been going on for quite some time. And it looks like it wasn't just Aaron Rodgers, it's just this team as a whole. The Atlanta game, to me, they could have won that game. They only lost by 1 point. I just feel like there was a couple of miscues by Jordan Love on the offensive side of the football, a couple of false starts, a couple of things on that nature that changed the game for me as far as them facing the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think the Atlanta Falcons are a better team by any chance. I just think them being at home turned out to be the difference, and it definitely helped them out in a large way. So I'm not saying I'll never say that the Atlanta Falcons are a better team than the Green Bay Packers. I feel like after a couple of games, if they were to play a series, I think Green Bay could squeak out of that. Looking at their next game against the Saints, that's another divisional matchup. The Saints, looking at their game last night, which we'll touch more on going over as far as the full highlights and full statistics of that game. They didn't really look that much better than Carolina. It's just that when you have Derek Carr versus Bryce Young, that experience is glaring. This is Derek Carr's 10th season in the NFL, and Bryce Young is a rookie. Bryce Young definitely he's still trying to work things out. So as far as the Saints go, getting back to that game with the Packers and Saints on Sunday, because they're at home, we'll talk more about that game on Sunday. But I think being at home will help out the Saints. And also being at home against the Detroit Lions, staying home for that Thursday night game, that'll help them get things right. Their first 2 games were on the road. So this is their home opener on Sunday. And I think that fan base at Lambeau Field will definitely help them out and kind of right the ship in a way with these 2 games they got. The two games after that are back on the road for Monday Night Football. They're at the Las Vegas Raiders, but they have a bye in between those two games. So that'll again help them very much because they'll have that tilt at Denver. So depending on how the weather is, I'm not sure if that'll be a factor or not, but it's kind of hard to say with Denver. We'll touch more on them, but it's kind of hard to say with what's going to happen with Denver. And then finally, that Minnesota Vikings matchup here at home at 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th. I could see them taking that game. We'll prognosticate that game as we get closer to it, but the NFC North is not as definitive as I thought it would be. I thought Detroit would be on top. I thought Minnesota and Green Bay would kind of be in the mix. But everybody's in the mix. Even Chicago at 0-2, they're not really out of it yet because they have Minnesota with them at 0-2. And then you have the Green Bay Packers at 1-1. You have, the Chicago Bears are 0-2. The Lions are 1-1. Minnesota Vikings are 0-2. So again, that division doesn't belong to anybody at this point in time. So the Green Bay Packers, they'll look to right the ship against the Saints for their home opener. And at the Atlanta Falcons, they'll look to just keep things going. Again, Jordan Love, he was a far cry from week one as far as efficiency, and he did have some penalties that caused false starts and whatnot. But he's still connecting with different receivers. He connected with 7 different receivers. And a young wide receiver by the name of Jaden Reed, a wide receiver rookie, he was picked in the second round out of Michigan State. He caught 2 touchdowns, so he already has 4 touchdowns on the season in 2 games. He might become a guy that you can trust down the stretch. I know this is only his second game, but him grabbing more touchdowns, that's definitely something you can look at down the stretch. As far as Atlanta goes, Desmond Ridder, to me, didn't really do anything to improve on week one. But Bijan Robinson is definitely showing us his versatility in the passing game and the running game, and he gave him that much-needed help out of the backfield. Not only did he lead the team in rushing, but he was the 3rd leading receiver because Ridder only connected with 4 receivers over the course of the day. That means he wasn't seeing all of his reads. So we'll just have to see with the Atlanta Falcons to see what they really are. It's very early in the season. One thing that I've noticed is that week one can definitely be a lie, but week two can definitely tell the truth about you. And we'll definitely have to see if this is the truth about the Atlanta Falcons. Moving into the next result here, the Buffalo Bills defeated the Las Vegas Raiders at home, 38-10. They were hosting the Las Vegas Raiders, 38-10. The Bills were hosting them. Josh Allen carved up that defense. He was 31 of 37 for 274 yards and 3 touchdowns. And also looking at the other side of things, Jimmy Garoppolo, 16 of 24, 185 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions for the Las Vegas Raiders. Also looking at the rushing side of things here, James Cook had 19 carries for 128 yards, but he didn't find the end zone. Damian Harris found the end zone with 7 carries for 33 yards to go along with Latavius Murray having 6 carries for 22 yards and also finding the end zone as well. Josh Allen was spectacular. Definitely the opposite of how he played against the Jets in week one. He didn't turn the ball over as opposed to turning the ball over 4 times. So again, the exact opposite of how he played week one. Jimmy Garoppolo, he just struggled. This Bills team was just all over him all day, throwing 2 picks here. He just kind of was a catalyst for kind of what would be a game that would kind of keep things going in their direction. He also threw for just below 200 yards. So he just wasn't nearly as effective. He was decent against the Denver Broncos, but I felt like the Broncos left some points on the board to kind of give them the ability to capitalize. He wasn't excellent. He didn't carve up the Broncos. He didn't have a Sam Howell type performance at all against the Broncos. And we'll touch on that more as well. But looking at the receiving end of things here, the leading receiver for the Buffalo Bills was Gabe Davis with 6 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, he had 7 catches for 66 yards but didn't find the end zone. And Dalton Kincaid, tight end for the Buffalo Bills, had 5 catches for 43 yards. On the receiving side for the Las Vegas Raiders, Devontae Adams had 6 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. Josh Jacobs, check this out. He had 9 carries for -2 yards. So I had 2 more yards than Josh Jacobs on the ground on Sunday, rushing the ball. But receiving the ball, Josh Jacobs actually had 5 catches for 51 yards. So he couldn't run the ball for anything, but he's able to catch the ball and kind of bail Garoppolo out as far as catching the ball in the flat. So that kind of helped him a little bit, but it just wasn't ultimately enough to make any kind of actual impact on the game. Again, the Buffalo looked great. Buffalo showed why that they've been a top team, or considered to be a Super Bowl team over the last few years, and Josh Allen showed why he's been an MVP candidate. Again, he managed to be turnover free and was deadly accurate with the football. He only threw 6 incompletions. So that tells you he was very accurate and was seeing his reads all day because the Raiders didn't really put a lot of pressure on him. If you're Las Vegas, you're now 1-1, and you haven't really shown that you're a dominant team yet. Looking at the AFC West, it's much like I was talking about in the previous discussion as far as the AFC North and also the NFC South as well. It's hard to say who's going to do what as far as leading a division because the Chiefs, they lost their opener and they did bounce back. We'll talk about them. You have the Chiefs sitting at 1-1. You have the Raiders sitting at 1-1. You have the Broncos sitting at 0-2, and their 2 losses are about a combined 3 points. So it's not like they're getting blown out, but there's just opportunities that they're leaving on the table. And secondly, looking at the Chargers, they're 0-2 as well. They've had a rough start also. So the AFC West is wide open. I'm just really not sure who's going to win that. But if you were a betting man, you would take the Chiefs just due to the simple fact that they're the Chiefs and they've owned that division. But they got to get rolling. There's just certain things about the Chiefs that I haven't seen yet this season that I've seen in previous seasons. We'll discuss the Chiefs more regarding their result against Jacksonville, but we'll just have to see with the Chiefs. The Raiders, let's prognosticate that schedule as far as what they're looking at. For week 3, they're going to be home against the Pittsburgh Steelers for Sunday Night Football. So that's going to be their next game that they have on the schedule to try to bounce back from this loss at Buffalo. They're at the Los Angeles Chargers October 1st, 4:05 p.m. Eastern on the CBS. The following week for Monday Night Football, they are home against the Green Bay Packers October 9th, 8:15 Eastern Time. They're also home the following week on that Sunday, October 15th, against the New England Patriots, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. And the following week, they're they're actually at the Chicago Bears, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd. So just looking at those 5 games for the Raiders, man, we'll talk about the results as they come, certainly, but it's going to be tough sledding. That Pittsburgh Steelers team, they definitely show that they still got the defense. It's kind of the offense we're questioning with all the young pieces, but their defense is still definitely in there, and that's definitely what was the key to their game last night against Cleveland. We'll definitely touch on that as we wrap up the show, the Monday Night Football results, but I can see Pittsburgh kind of making things tough for Jimmy Garoppolo. And then at the Chargers, that's a rivalry game within your division. So, the next 5 games here, it's really going to show where the Raiders are going to sit in that division. And with the 1 game separating the 4 teams, it's going to be one of those things where can they show that consistency? I feel like Denver gave them that victory that they had to start the year. It wasn't a situation where they had the game in a stranglehold by any means. Whereas Buffalo, from pillar to pillar, they had a hold on the game. There was never a situation where I thought that the Las Vegas Raiders would win that game. The Green Bay Packers, that's a home game, and also the New England Patriots, that's a home game. 3 of their next 4 games were on the road. So their first 2 games are at home, excuse me. Their first 2 games were on the road, so this is a home opener for them for Sunday Night Football. So there could be some juice to go along with that, with them being at home. So we'll just have to see as far as what they do over their next 5 games, but they're very up and down. So I couldn't tell you what the Raiders are going to be here. The Buffalo Bills on the flip side here, looking to their schedule, this is where things kind of get interesting for them because they already have a division loss, but they'll look to get that back in a couple of weeks. They're at the Washington Commanders September 24th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Buffalo, New York, and Washington are not far, so that's not like a cross-country trip or anything for them. They're also home against the Miami Dolphins October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's the game that they're going to want to get because losing at the Jets to start the year put them 0-1 in the division. Beating the Raiders is nice because you want to win, but it isn't something that will really affect them in the standings, I don't think. So we'll have to see how that goes. At Washington, that's an NFC matchup. So, again, wins are good, but it's not going to really reflect on what they're going to do in the conference and the division. Those are the more important games. But I could see them winning that football game because, again, they're not going to be far away from home. The Miami Dolphins game, October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern, That's huge. That's the game where we see who's for real in that division. Miami, I said, well, they look like the best team so far through 2 weeks in the AFC, but we're definitely going to see who's for real in that division, whether it's Miami or whether it's Buffalo. I don't think it's the Jets or Patriots. Miami and Buffalo is what it's going to come down to. I mentioned this game previously, but the following week, the Buffalo Bills are on the road against the Jacksonville Jaguars. October 8th, it's going to be 9:30 p.m. Or I'm sorry, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. That game is being played in England, but it's considered a home game for Jacksonville, so they're at Jacksonville, even though both teams are going to be in England. The following week for Sunday Night Football, the Bills are hosting the New York Giants, 8:20 Eastern, October 15th. So that's in state for the New York Giants. They're just traveling upstate to face the Bills. And the following week, another divisional matchup for the Buffalo Bills is at the New England Patriots, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern. So they're going to have a chance here to kind of get things right within the division, at least with facing the Dolphins and the Patriots. They will have faced all three of their opponents at least once so far after that game is taken care of with the Patriots. So they can get things right if it's just for them kind of just showing us what they are, as has been the case the past couple years. We'll really get to see if they're the real deal or not. So the Buffalo Bills, we kind of just went over those games here. Dalton Kincaid, the rookie tight end out of Utah, he's one to watch because their starting tight end Dawson Knox, they're using a lot of two tight end sets with both of them. And they've both shown that they can be a threat as far as catching the ball. So if it's a situation where you can't get Diggs or get Gabe Davis going, it's nice to have those bookend tight ends. And it's also nice to have a backfield with James Cook and with Damian Harris. They're showing what they can do as well. So I can see the Buffalo Bills definitely getting going as far as their team goes here. The Las Vegas Raiders, we're just going to have to see how that goes as far as that team here. Moving on to the next result here, an AFC North matchup that occurred here. The Baltimore Ravens were at the Cincinnati Bengals and were able to get the win 27-24. Lamar Jackson had 24. Was 24 of 33 for 237 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joe Burrow was 27 of 41 for 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Where there's reports that he actually re-aggravated the calf injury during this game here that he had been dealing with since camp. So he's actually uncertain for Sunday. We'll touch more on that in a minute. But looking at Joe Burrow's stats here, he threw the 2 touchdowns to T. Higgins, who was able to get himself going. But as far as the game, he had the long turnover with the interception to Geno Smith of Baltimore, which was returned for 36 yards and put them in great field position. So Joe Burrow through 2 games has kind of been to say the least, but I think that calf issue that he's dealing with is a lot bigger than they're letting on. Regarding the rushing statistic, Gus Edwards of the Baltimore Ravens had 10 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson was actually their second leading rusher with 12 carries for 54 yards. And Justice Hill had 11 carries for 41 yards. Remember, J.K. Dobbins, their leading running back, went out for the season with the Achilles tendon injury, so they won't have him the rest of the year. So as far as running the football, they were able to get it pretty balanced. Lamar Jackson, he's known for running the football anyway, so to see him up there with the other two running backs isn't really something that surprised me very much. What was surprising was the lack of running from the Cincinnati Bengals. The only or the only person to speak of as far as running the football was Joe Mixon with 13 carries for 59 yards. They only had 62 yards as a whole for this team as far as running the football. So just not a good day for Cincinnati here. And they are now 0-2 while being 0-2 in their division. Divisional games matter a lot. And they've already dropped 2 so far. So that's unfortunate for Cincinnati here. And with the news of Burrow having an issue with that calf muscle, things could get dicier for him. So we'll just have to see how things play out. On the receiving end here, the Baltimore Ravens, Nelson Aguilar, he was their leading receiver with 5 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers, the rookie wide receiver out of Boston College, he's showing he can play. And I mentioned his name earlier, and he's definitely showing that he can play when it comes to the football. He had 4 catches for 62 yards. And tight end Mark Andrews, he had 5 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown as well. So nice bit of contribution from the receiving. Odell Beckham had a very quiet day yesterday on Sunday, but I think a lot of that had to do with the way that Jackson was spreading the ball around, and when he wasn't seeing his reads, he was running with the football. So I think that was a contributing factor why we didn't hear much from Odell Beckham Jr. for Baltimore. On the Cincinnati side for receiving, T. Higgins, again, 2 touchdowns. He had 8 catches for 89 yards, and he definitely broke out from his Week 1 performance where he didn't have any catches. So he definitely turned things around. Tyler Boyd had 6 catches for 52 yards. Jamar Chase, the all-pro wide receiver, he had a very quiet day. He had 5 catches for 31 yards. Um, Jamar Chase, he's had a very quiet 2 games so far. He hasn't jumped out to the big start like he had his rookie year in 2021 or last year in 2022. So it's kind of interesting. T. Higgins, it was very puzzling for him to get no catches, but he bounced back in a way for them that they were able to work with. We'll just have to see if Jamar Chase gets it together, but it's pretty concerning because he's going to be your top guy as far as catching the ball. It's interesting to me that he's having the season that he's having, but again, I think he can bounce back, and I think he's going to show why he's considered a top receiver in the league and why you probably took him with your first pick in fantasy football. Joe Burrow, he was efficient, but again, with that turnover, that's what put the Ravens in great field position to get the touchdown on the following drive. That calf injury that's been nagging him since camp, with him being uncertain to play week 3, with soft tissue injuries, calves, thighs, hamstrings, the best way to heal that they typically tell you is rest. But when you're dealing with that to start the season, where are you going to get that rest from? Where are you going to get that chance to really sit down and actually give that hamstring time to heal? In that division, you really can't afford to have him out because things are very tight in that division. Baltimore's off to a 2-0 start while you're 0-2, and Cleveland and Pittsburgh are 1-1. We'll touch on those teams in a bit as far as the Monday Night Football results and what they're going to be like down the road, especially with that devastating injury to Nick Chubb. Cleveland's season might be in peril. But nevertheless, things are still tight right now if you're Cincinnati, and you can't afford to lose Joe Burrow for any amount of time. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that breaks down, because a lot of the prognostication of the Cincinnati Bengals was with the idea that Joe Burrow would be available and be healthy. But if that changes at all, things are going to be tough for the the Cincinnati Bengals for sure. I'm looking at Cincinnati's next few games here. That Monday Night Football, they're playing the Monday Night Football game week 3. They're at home against the Los Angeles Rams, 8:15 Eastern on ESPN. The following week, they're at Tennessee for week 4, 6 days later. That's 1 p.m. Eastern on October 1st. The following week, they're at the Arizona Cardinals, 4:05 Eastern, October 8th. Week 6, they're at home against the Seattle Seahawks, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 15th. They have a bye week that following week, and then week 8, they're at the San Francisco 49ers, 4:25 p.m. Eastern, which is a West Coast trip. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, those games, a couple of these games are winnable with the right personnel, but personnel is key. Is Joe Burrow going to be there? Joe Burrow needs to be there. Plain and simple. When I look at the depth chart for quarterback, they released Trevor Siemian after camp. He was the backup, so they would be going with Jake Browning as their backup quarterback. They don't have a third quarterback or a fourth quarterback at all. Those are the only 2 quarterbacks. And this is his first season as far as playing in the NFL. Jake Browning is 27, but he dabbled around in some of the other leagues, like in Canada. He played some football in the XFL for a season. And so this is his first season on an NFL roster. Does he have that experience to take over for Joe Burrow if needed? I don't know. He's only thrown 1 attempt in his career. So that's a dire situation if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. You really need Joe Burrow to be healthy. That's one of those things that's definitely going to hurt their season. They're already off to an 0-2 start with him. So what will you be without him? We have no evidence to indicate that Jake Browning can take over for him and lead this team where they need to go. This team has AFC Championship, Super Bowl aspirations. They've been to the last 2 AFC Championships. So it's like Super Bowl or bust for this team with them going to a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So we'll just have to see how things pull for the Cincinnati Bengals, and we'll definitely keep things updated as far as Joe Burrow's ability to play for week 3. On the flip side, look at the Baltimore Ravens schedule over the course of their next 5 games. They're home against the Indianapolis Colts, 1 p.m. Eastern, Sunday, September 24th. The following Sunday, they're at Cleveland, October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern. The following Sunday after that, they're at Pittsburgh, October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern. So 3 of their first 5 games are going to be divisional. If they can win those, that's going to set them up for success. The following week, they're home against the Tennessee Titans, October 15th. Now, that's actually going to be a game that's going to be played out of the country as one of the other international games. This game is being played at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in Germany. So that's actually an international game that, even though technically speaking, the Titans are at home, that's going to be an international game with Baltimore and the Tennessee both traveling. The following week, Baltimore is back home against the Detroit Lions, 11 a.m. I'm sorry, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd. Detroit, we've seen highs and lows with this football team. There's news coming out that C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the cornerback that they picked up to help solidify their secondary, might have a torn pectoral. And if that's the case, that's really going to put a damper on what Detroit was looking to do this season. And that's just how the theme for a lot of these football teams this season. 2 games and 2 weeks in, somebody major has gone down for you, or you've had a disappointing result to start your year where you thought you were going to win that game and it just didn't go your way. So the Detroit Lions, I'm still taking a flyer on that football team because of the division they're in and the NFC being wide open. But what I expect is going to have to come down a bit as far as the dominance of that division because, they're still in the mix with Green Bay and Minnesota is not that far off. Chicago, we'll have to see with them. But that game with Baltimore, Detroit is going to be a good one because they're hosting the Detroit Lions. So prognostication-wise, Baltimore is in good shape. You definitely want to start out 2-0 regardless of who you're playing, and that's what they've been able to do so far. So shout out to the Baltimore Ravens on doing what they need to do, and we'll have to see if Cincinnati can pick it up. Moving on to the next result, an NFC matchup. We actually just touched on this a little bit. The Seattle Seahawks, they defeated the Detroit Lions 37-31 in Detroit. Geno Smith was 32 of 41 for 328 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jared Goff was 28 of 35, 323 yards, 3 touchdowns, and had 1 interception. So he was actually 80% completion throwing the football, which is pretty good. As far as running the football, Kenneth Walker, the third for the Seattle Seahawks, had 17 carries for 43 yards and also had 2 touchdowns as well. Geno Smith had a little bit of contribution on the ground with 3 carries for 20 yards. On the Detroit side, David Montgomery had 16 carries for 67 yards and 1 touchdown. And the rookie Jahmyr Gibbs, he contributed a bit on that end at 7 carries for 17 yards. So the Detroit Lions, this game was definitely a shootout. A lot of back and forth between both teams, and Geno Smith was able to secure the win in overtime. But this was definitely a shootout. This reminded me of the last year, the game last season in 2022, where Seattle and Detroit played each other. And that game was the reason why the Detroit Lions didn't make the playoffs. They and Seattle were both 9-8 football teams, but because Seattle beat them head to head, they were able to get to the playoffs, and that's what kept Detroit from coming home. Will that bite Detroit in the butt again? It remains to be seen, but this definitely had the same look of that game in 2022. So for me, I just think Seattle and Detroit, they're kind of the same, and they were kind of just causing some separation, but the expectation of who was going to be a better team was with Detroit because of the fact that they were able to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs to start their season. So looking at the running or the receiving aspect of the game, the Seattle Seahawks, DK Metcalf, he had 6 catches for 75 yards, but was unable to find the end zone. The star of the show was Tyler Lockett with 8 catches for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns, the second touchdown coming in overtime to win the game for the Seattle Seahawks. Noah Fant also contributed as well on the receiving end with 4 catches for 56 yards. Looking at the Detroit Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown had 6 catches for 102 yards but didn't find the end zone. Josh Reynolds would contribute in that aspect with 5 catches for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. And rookie tight end Sam Laporta also had 5 catches for 63 yards. So this game didn't really tell me anything about either team. Again, the Detroit Lions, they may have lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson for the season with a torn pectoral. We're waiting to get confirmation of that. But he has been placed on IR, which means he is going to miss at least 4 games. Whether or not he'll be on IR long term, it remains to be seen. The Lions also placed their edge rusher James Houston on IR as well. Gardner-Johnson, he was huge. He was signed on a 1-year deal, and he was signed to help the secondary, which was definitely in dire need and was kind of costing him some games last year. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent again after this season. I wonder if the Lions will bring him back because in the 2 games he was there for him, he had a huge impact as far as the mindset of the team. It was kind of like the way Aaron Rodgers, how he affected the team for the New York Jets. Even though he wasn't out there was a lot of stuff in camp that he had a lot of influence on and a lot of things that he had put his name on and kind of put his spin on. And I think the defense was kind of the same for the Detroit Lions. Again, CJ Gardner Johnson is going to have to miss a minimum of 4 games, but with a torn pec, that could sideline him for the rest of the season. David Montgomery, he's listed as day to day with a thigh injury. He did suffer a thigh injury later in this game, and he's going to be missing a couple of weeks for this injury. They're not going to place him on IR, but he is going to miss a couple of weeks. And then 2 of your linemen, your offensive linemen, left tackle Taylor Decker, he had a bad injury. He missed the game on Sunday and is expected to miss more time. And then right guard Halev Atai, he has a knee injury and he's expected to miss significant time. So for the Detroit Lions, right off the bat, a lot of stuff is crumbling with this football. It doesn't have anything to do with ability, and it's more of an availability issue because, again, football is a rough sport. So we're just going to have to see how they can bounce back and recover from this. They're now 1-1. The Seattle Seahawks are also 1-1 as well. Let's take a look here and prognosticate and look at the upcoming schedule for these teams here and see how things are going to shake up. For the Seattle Seahawks here, as far as their Week 3 matchup, they're going to be heading back home to take on the Carolina Panthers. That's 4:05 Eastern, September 24th. I can see that being a win based on what I saw last night with Carolina. I can see Seattle taking that one. They're at the New York Giants October 2nd for Monday Night Football. That's 8:15 Eastern. They're at Cincinnati after their Week 5 bye. So that's the Week 6 game. They're at Cincinnati October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern. The following week, they're home against the Arizona Cardinals, 4:05 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd on Fox. Yeah, Seattle, they could roll off in the next few games. But again, football's a crazy sport, and we're going to discuss each of these games. But things are looking up for Seattle. Getting that win at Detroit is huge, and it really changes the way you look at losing at home against the Rams. People were very down on Seattle with that game, and this kind of got people back in the right frame of mind. The game that they're going to be playing after that on October 29th, they'll be home against the Cleveland Browns, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. Cleveland, we'll talk about them to end the show with their Monday Night Football matchup against Pittsburgh. But man, Cleveland losing, I just can't help but think about that loss of Nick Chubb at running back. That's going to be huge, not only for the team, but for him as well, because this is his second major knee injury that he's had to recover from. We'll talk about that more, but that just can't help but think about how huge that is for him. As far as this, looking at the Detroit Lions here, looking at their next 5 games to kind of see where they're going to be here. Taking a look at the schedule, they're home against the Atlanta Falcons, 1 p.m. Eastern, September 24th on Fox. That's their Week 3 matchup. And then they turn right around and they're at Green Bay for Thursday Night Football, September 28th, 8:15 p.m. Eastern on Amazon Prime. That's their Week 4 matchup. A divisional game. That'll be their first divisional game of the season, so that'll kind of give them an idea as where their supremacy is in that division. It looks like 10 days later, October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern, Week 5, they'll be facing the Carolina Panthers. Week 6, they're at Tampa, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Week 7, their Monday Night Football game, they will be home against the Las Vegas Raiders, 8:15 p.m. Eastern on ABC. So the Detroit Lions, again, this is going to come down to a lot of different things here. It's going to come down to personnel, and it's going to come down to the play, the availability of your team, and also how the team plays. It's very hard to prognosticate these games because we're going off of what we've seen. But with new information, things change. I just don't know if Detroit is going to dominate this division like they were going to prior. They should win against Atlanta. I could see them winning that game at home, even with the injuries they have on defense and offense. But the Atlanta game, they should win. Green Bay, that's the one that might get them because that's just 4 days later and they're on the road. So we'll just have to see how that shakes up with Detroit. But losing at home was not something that people had on their bingo card. At least I didn't. So that's a tough one for Detroit, being 1-1 here. Switching gears to another matchup here that occurred in the AFC. The next game that we're going to talk about here is the Tennessee Titans defeating the Los Angeles Chargers 27-24. That game to me swung on a couple of things here, but we'll get to the box score and kind of go over the statistics over how the teams did here. The Tennessee Titans here, Ryan Tannehill, he had a much better game than he had the previous week. 20 of 24 for 246 yards and a touchdown, which means he was 80% completion. Their leading rusher, Derrick Henry, 25 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown for his first touchdown of the season. As far as throwing the football, Justin Herbert for the Los Angeles Chargers, he was 27 of 41 for 305 yards and two touchdowns. He didn't turn the ball over, but I feel like he was outplayed again at the quarterback position, even though Tannehill had less yardage. For the receiving, for the running the football for Los Angeles, they were without Austin Eckler, who does a lot for them as far as running the football and catching the football. Their leading rusher was Joshua Kelly with 13 carries for 39 yards. And one of those carries was actually 15 yards. So technically, if you take that carry away, that would have made him 12 carries. That would have gave him 12 carries for 24 yards. That's not going to do it because your next leading rusher was Darius Davis with one carry for 10 yards. So they definitely needed Austin Eckler. On the flip side here, again, the Tennessee Titans definitely dominated the ball rushing. Derrick Henry, 25 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 15 yards as well. Tajay Spears was next with 8 carries for 49 yards, and Ryan Tannehill actually ran in a touchdown to go along with throwing a touchdown. So he had 2 total touchdowns on the day. Looking at the receiving statistics here, I mean, to be honest with you, there were 2 guys that immediately stick out for Los Angeles Chargers. Keenan Allen, 8 catches for 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mike Williams, 8 catches for 83 yards, even though he didn't find the end zone. So he went to his guys. It was a situation where Joshua Herbert went to his guys that he normally would, but because Austin Eckler does so much, they really missed him. They really missed him. And as far as that ankle injury, it's expected him that he's going to miss more games. So this Los Angeles Chargers offense is definitely going to have to figure out a way to get it to other guys. But Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are going to be your guys as far as receiving the football. But Austin Eckler, he could have a day where he catches the ball for about 80 yards himself and then runs for another 100. That's just how vital he is to this team. So they definitely felt that in their loss. And looking at the Tennessee Titans side here, Treylon Burks, he did have 3 catches for 76 yards. Chris Moore had 1 catch, but it went for 49 yards on a bomb that was thrown in the second quarter. DeAndre Hopkins had another standard day with 4 catches for 40 yards. And your receiver, as far as catching the football for a touchdown, Nick Westbrook-Akine, he had 3 catches for 25 yards. So Tannehill, he was kind of efficient as far as spreading the ball around to different receivers. But the problem, again, for Los Angeles is you had only 2 guys that you can really count on as far as the ball, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Tight end Gerald Everett, he did chip in with 3 catches for 47 yards. Joshua Palmer, he's kind of like your 3rd or 4th receiver in a sense. He had 3 catches for 13 yards. So there was just a lot of drop-off after Keenan Allen and after Mike Williams, and that's essentially what we saw here. The rookie Quentin Johnston only had 1 catch for 7 yards, and he was only targeted twice. So that just kind of lets you know where he is. He'll have to work himself up the chart as far as being someone that Justin Herbert can reliably throw the ball to. So that's just a situation where that's just going to have to unfold as it does here. Looking at the game here, there were no interceptions and no fumbles. So that definitely jumped out to me. Neither quarterback was bad with the football, but it just turns out that the Tennessee Titans had the better day here. I'm looking at the Tennessee Titans as far as their next 5 games. After this win, they improved to 1-1. But looking at their next 5 games here, this coming Sunday, they're at the Cleveland Browns here at 1 p.m. Eastern, September 24th on CBS. The following week, they're home against the Cincinnati Bengals, October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be on Fox. They're at the Indianapolis Colts that following week, October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. The following week, they're actually going to be home against the Baltimore Ravens on October 15th, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, 7:30 a.m. Local time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Again, that game is being played in Germany at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So again, that's technically a home game for Tennessee, even though they're in another country. The following week, they're back home again, actually 2 weeks out. They have a bye that following week when they come back from Germany. Then October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern, they're home against the Atlanta Falcons. And then after that, they are home on a Thursday night football game just 4 days later, on November the 2nd, 8:15 Eastern at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Tennessee Titans, to me, I said this at the beginning of the season, they're in a division where you have the Colts and Texans kind of rebuilding because they have a lot of young pieces. And then you also have in the division with you another team that I don't know what they are, the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they looked pretty good week one, but they didn't look good against the Chiefs at home. So I just don't know what they are yet. So the Titans are 1-1, the Jaguars are 1-1, the Colts are 1-1, and Houston is 0-2. So getting that win is kind of helping you keep pace in your division, but it doesn't define what you are. And then on the flip side, looking at things for Los Angeles Chargers, the only thing that's kind of keeping them from being just buried right off the bat is that, again, in that division, you kind of have the same thing going on. You have the Raiders at 1-1, you have the Chiefs at 1-1, and then if you're the Chargers, you have the Broncos with you at 0-2. So now the AFC West is kind of a toss-up, and that's very much up in the air as well. So we'll just have to see how these things pan out here. But if you're the Titans, just keep getting that win. Definitely keeps you in the right frame of mind and keeps you in good shape as far as the division goes and as far as your conference. Because remember, the division and the conference, those games are very important. When you're an NFC team playing against the AFC and an AFC team playing against the NFC, of course you want to win those games, but they just don't have as much bearing on the playoff scenario as those other games do. So shout out to the Titans for winning that game in overtime with that field goal from Nick Folk. But if you're the Chargers at 0-2, you still have a shot. You can still pick things up. You can definitely get going. The next result we're going to talk about is an NFC matchup where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeated the Chicago Bears 27-17. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers improved to 2-0, while the Bears fall to 0-2. Justin Fields, he had another game to forget. He was 16 of 29 for 211 yards, 1 touchdown, but he had 2 picks. On the ground, he had 4 carries for 3 yards. He ran in a touchdown very close in the red zone, but looking at his game overall here, that he didn't give the Bears what he needed as far as being a complete player. On the flip side, however, Baker Mayfield, he had a pretty terrific game, 26 of 34 for 317 yards and a touchdown to go on with 6 carries for 17 yards. The running the football, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rachaad White had 17 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. That was definitely huge for them. And they had 120 rushing yards as a team. So he was pretty much the guy that got it done for him. Baker added 17 yards, but Rachaad White was your guy. The Chicago Bears had 67 rushing yards as a team, which is not very good. Khalil Herbert, he started it back for them, and he had 7 carries for 35 yards. Rashawn Johnson was next on the team with 4 carries for 32 yards. But one of those carries was a 29-yard gain that he got in one shot. So if you take a look at the other 3 carries, he only had 3 yards. So that's not going to get it done for them. As far as receiving here, Mike Evans, through 2 games, he's definitely getting it done, and he's helping Baker Mayfield out a lot. 6 catches for 171 yards and a touchdown. He had a 70-yard catch and was targeted 8 times. Chris Godwin, he had 5 catches for 58 yards. He didn't see the end zone, but he got them 3 first downs on those catches. So he's looking like the guy that's going to move the chains for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Whereas Mike Evans is looking like your number 1 guy. He's looking like the number 1 receiver for this team, and he's been the best target for Baker Mayfield so far. Definitely helping them out in that regard. Looking at the Chicago passing side here, DJ Moore definitely broke out for his first 100-yard game with the team, 6 catches for 104 yards, but he didn't find the end zone. He was targeted 7 times and caught 6 of those. Cole Kmet, the tight end for the team, was next with 4 catches for 38 yards. Chase Claypool, wide receiver, had 3 catches for 36 yards and a touchdown. So he scored Justin Fields' only touchdown. But the story here for me was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They definitely looked good through 2 games. Going up and getting that win over Minnesota week 1 And getting this win here over Chicago week 2 has kind of set a nice precedent for what this team could be. Obviously, when you lose Tom Brady, whether he's 45, 35, whatever, he's the GOAT as far as playing quarterback. And you didn't know what you were getting with Baker Mayfield. This is his 4th team. And so you just weren't sure what he was going to be. But so far, he's looking good. They're definitely one of the more surprising teams as far as 2-0, as far as I'm concerned. Week 3 will really show if they're for real. They're hosting the Philadelphia Eagles for Monday Night Football, September 25th, 7:15 p.m. Eastern on ABC. So that's definitely going to be a huge test for them to see if they're for real or not. They're at the Saints week 4, October 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern. They have a bye week 5, and then week 6, they're home against the Detroit Lions, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern. The following week, they're also at home, 1 p.m. Eastern, against the Atlanta Falcons in an NFC South matchup, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. That's going to be a game that they really need to go along with their matchup against the Saints. Getting those divisional wins, you definitely want those. They have a Thursday night football game following that at the Buffalo Bills, 8:15 p.m. Eastern on Amazon Prime, October 26th. So that one is also going to be a very interesting game too, because at Buffalo, that crowd could be very hostile, and with it being late October, it's a possibility it might be kind of chilly up there. Tampa's a Florida team, and I don't know how well they'll travel, but that's a game that they're going to probably also show if they're for real or not as well. So Tampa Bay, again, they're very surprising at 2-0. We'll have to see how things are looking as far as what they do down the stretch. But hey, give it up for Baker Mayfield. He's definitely one of the top passers in this league so far, and so you're definitely gonna want to keep an eye on that offense. On the defense, also got Shaq Barrett back, and he also had a pick 6, coming back off of that Achilles injury he suffered last October. So that was huge for them as well, getting Shaq Barrett back on that defense. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when you look at that division, again, they're up there with the Atlanta Falcons and the Saints at 2-0, and the Carolina Panthers at 0-2. So the NFC South is 3 of the 4 teams are at 2-0. Very surprising to say the least. We're going to see things shake out as these teams start to play each other and the losses are taken. But right off the bat, they're showing that hey, we could be in the mix too. Plain and simple. The Chicago Bears at 0-2. I kind of expected this with them. Justin Fields has definitely fallen off a little bit from what he was doing last season as far as running and throwing the football. He doesn't have the rushing yards he had last season. He's not on that pace. So yeah, they're going to definitely need some help there. It's very early for them to be 0-2, but like I said here, we're just going to have to see how things shake up. They're at Kansas City, September 24th, 4:25 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. I'm going to call that an L. Kansas City, that's only their second home game, and I think they're going to take care of business. I'm going to just call that an L right now for the Bears. They're home hosting the Denver Broncos the following week, week 4, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Not sure, because we're going to talk about the Broncos in a bit. I'm really not sure what the Broncos are going to do. They're 0-2, but for some reason, them losing by 3 points in total with those 2 games, I just don't think as bad as their record shows. They're a better 0-2 team than the Bears, if there is such a thing. 0-2 is 0-2, but to me, I think they have a better shot of bouncing back than the Bears. But we'll see week 4 when the Broncos come to Chicago. Week 5, 4 days later, Thursday Night Football, they're at the Washington Commanders, the Chicago Bears. That's 8:15 Eastern on Amazon Prime. 10 days later, they're home hosting the Minnesota Vikings in a divisional matchup. That's 1 p.m. Eastern, October 15th. The following week, they're staying home to host the Las Vegas Raiders, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd on Fox. When you're 0-2, you want to win a few of these games. I can't say for sure if the Chicago Bears are going to. I still have them as one of the bottom teams in the league. And losing to Green Bay and losing to Tampa Bay kind of prove that, because I don't consider Green Bay or Tampa Bay cream of the crop teams in the NFC. We'll have to see how the records shake out, but those aren't the teams that jump out at me as Super Bowl aspirations in the NFC. So them losing that game kind of shows that they're not going to be really ready for another couple of years, and they may need to make more changes. What those changes will be and what they need to be is to be determined at a later time. But Chicago, it's going to be tough sledding. Tampa Bay, it's very much to be determined. Another AFC matchup here that we're going to switch gears and talk about here for occurred Sunday afternoon. The Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville 17-9 to improve to 1-1, while the Jacksonville Jaguars fall to 1-1 here. A very, very, very light scoring game considering the Chiefs. I felt like they had to overcome mistakes to win this football game, and that's kind of been their theme so far. Patrick Mahomes was 29 of 41 for 305 yards. He did throw two touchdowns, and he had the one interception. Trevor Lawrence was 22 of 41 for 216 yards. He didn't throw any touchdowns, but he didn't throw any interceptions either. Trevor Lawrence was barely above 50% completion percentage in this game. And a lot of that had to do with the way Kansas City was harassing him. Chris Jones coming back, he definitely harassed Trevor Lawrence. He had 1.5 sacks. He had a tackle for loss. He had a solo tackle, and he had two hurry-ups. So getting Chris Jones back in that lineup alone made things tough for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And also, Trevor Lawrence fumbled the football. He did have a turnover as far as fumbling the football. So Trevor Lawrence just wasn't as on point as he was week one. I think that was a large contributing factor to that. Patrick Mahomes getting Kelsey back was fine, but it wasn't the catalyst for why they won the game. And I'll get over the statistics here and the rest of that in a minute. Looking at rushing the football, Travis Etienne had 12 carries for 40 yards, no touchdowns. And Trevor Lawrence was the second leading rusher with 5 carries for 26 yards. On the Kansas City side, Isaiah Pacheco had 12 carries for 70 yards. Patrick Mahomes was second, as well as leading the charge as rushing the ball for his team with 7 carries for 30 yards. So when you look at your running back, quarterback 10 and running the football, that's 100 yards, whereas Jacksonville had 66. You know what I mean? That's just another thing that Jacksonville didn't have as far as the ball as a whole. The contribution just wasn't there for the whole team. Looking at the receiving end here, Jacksonville, Christian Kirk had 11 catches for 110 yards, but he didn't find the end zone. They didn't find the end zone. That's the part, to me, that hurt the Jacksonville Jaguars, was settling for field goals. They settled for field goals the entire day. Brandon McMahon was 3 for 3. That's not going to get it done. If you turn those field goals into touchdowns, you win this game possibly 17. But, Kansas City's defense was actually the surprisingly better part of the game for them. With receiving for Kansas City, Sky Moore had 3 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce had 4 catches for 26 yards and a touchdown. But with Patrick Mahomes, the things that jumped out to me is he got the ball to the hands of 12 different receivers. He spread the ball around really well. He got balls to Justin Watson. He got a few balls to Noah Gray. Kadarius Toney showed up from the dead. He had 5 catches. He threw the ball to the backfield. Jerick McKinnon had 3 catches. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 2 catches. That's just what Patrick Mahomes does for your offense. He spreads the ball around really well. Let's look at the schedule for the Kansas City Chiefs and see what they're going to have the next 5 games. They're 1-1 now as a result of this victory over Jacksonville. They will be home against the Chicago Bears on 4:25 p.m. Eastern, September 24th. I stated that would be a win, and I'm going to take that. The Bears aren't going to win that game unless something crazy happens. They're at the New York Jets October 1st at 8:20 p.m. Eastern for a Sunday night football. When that game was scheduled, they probably had the idea of Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes, and we're not going to get that. I could see the Chiefs taking that game as well. Zach Wilson, we'll talk about him in a little bit, but Zach Wilson, he struggles with reads. He struggles with reading the defenses, and he struggles with seeing where his wide receivers are going to go before he throws the football. So I could see Kansas City eating his lunch. If Kansas City is going to do what they did to Trevor Lawrence, they can certainly do that to Zach Wilson. So the following week, the Kansas City Chiefs are at Minnesota. Week 5, the Minnesota Vikings at 4:25 p.m. Eastern get their first AFC West matchup when they take on the Denver Broncos October 12th at 8:15 Eastern on Amazon Prime. That's a Thursday night football game. Patrick Mahomes has not lost to the Broncos, and I don't see that changing. I don't. The following week, 10 days later, they're home against the Los Angeles Chargers at 4:25 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd on CBS. And I could see him winning that game as well. That'll be their second AFC West matchup of the year. I could see him taking that one as well. So like I said, Kansas City, even though they lost that early game, they're going to be fine. I could see them winning the next 4 games, maybe 5. This is the NFL, so again, we're just prognosticating and talking here, but it wouldn't surprise me to after that Jacksonville win. It wouldn't surprise me to see them as a 6-1 football team. If they win 5 more games, they could be a 6-1 football team. So Kansas City, like I said, they're fine. Jacksonville, that division is tight. That division is tight, and I don't mean like awesome. I mean tight as in who's going to do what, who's going to really show up, and who's going to really take that division over. I had Jacksonville taking that division over, but this is a step back for them. Another AFC matchup here, the AFC South that we're looking at here. That matchup was between the Indianapolis Colts. They defeated the Houston Texans 31-20. Anthony Richardson did play a bit more than 1 quarter before leaving with a concussion. His second game in as many weeks where he left early with an injury. That'll put the Colts at 1-1 in their division. That puts the Texans at 0-2. I was just discussing the AFC South. Jacksonville is 1-1. Indianapolis 1-1. Tennessee 1-1. And the Texans 0-2. The AFC South is tight. As far as statistics for the Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson was 6 of 10 for 56 yards before leaving the game with that injury. He also had 3 rushes for 35 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So his versatility with throwing the football and running the football is great as well. But the thing that I worry about is that he's kind of too run happy in his rookie year. And that was part of his rookie year so far. And that's part of the reason why he got that concussion. That's part of the reason why he was hit the way he was, is because he likes to take off. That's kind of the same thing we're seeing with Justin Fields. He's going to have to get better at his reads, and he's going to have to get better at reading the defense and seeing where to put the ball and when to run. So the leading passer for the Indianapolis Colts was Gardner Minshew, coming in relief of Richardson. He was 19 of 23 for 171 yards and also threw a touchdown as well. So he came in and he kind of righted the ship. It kind of got things going. The Indianapolis Colts were up 28-10 at the half. So there wasn't really much that needed to be done. They only scored 3 points in the second half, but they held the Texans to 10 points. So the Indianapolis Colts, to me, we're just gonna have to see how things shake out with this team. But Anthony Richardson, he's looking like the guy, but he's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to figure out a way to stay on the field for this team. As far as leading the charge for running the football for the Indianapolis Colts, Zach Moss, he was the guy that started. He had 18 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Anthony Richardson, again, he had 2 touchdowns on 3 carries for 35 yards. So he was your second leading rusher. But essentially, Moss had 88 of their 126 rushing yards as a team. For the Houston Texans, they only had 52 yards on the ground as a team, with Dameon Pierce leading the way, 15 carries for 31 yards. One of those rushes, however, was a 10-yard gain. So that would have meant that his other 14 carries only went for 21 yards. That's something that he's going to have to get together really quickly here. Looking at the receiving, that's kind of where things jump out here as far as the game goes. Michael Pittman Jr. had 8 catches for 56 yards. Will Mallory had 2 catches, but they went for 49 yards. He had the 1 catch for 43 yards and was targeted twice and caught both passes. And then next would be Josh Downs with 4 catches for 37 yards on 5 targets. So Anthony Richardson, again, he was able to get the ball into the hands of a few different receivers, but he was more prone to wanting to run the ball. So that's something that he's going to definitely get fixed and have to work on that for his career in the NFL. On the flip side for Houston, however, C.J. Stroud, he definitely had a better day as far as getting the ball to his guys. He was 30 of 47 for 384 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely had a better day than Indianapolis as far as throwing the ball, but they did take the L. Nico Collins, he had 7 catches for 146 yards and a touchdown. That guy is looking like a stud for that team, and he's easily jumping out as the number 1 wide receiver for those guys. Robert Woods was next with 6 catches for 74 yards. He did have a 25-yard catch and was targeted 9 times. Tank Dell, had 7 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown, and he was targeted 10 times and caught 7 of those balls. He's another young wide receiver that the Houston Texans are counting on. He was picked in the 3rd round with the 69th pick out of the University of Houston. So he's a hometown kid. Um, for him to have that showing to go along with Nico Collins, this kind of shows that they have a solid receiving core for Houston, even though they're young. And if CJ Stroud can build any kind of rapport with these two guys, you might have a nice little nucleus for the future. And you might have something you can work with here. Houston is 0-2. They're just a game out behind Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and Tennessee. So they're not out of it by any means. Looking at their next 5 games here, to me, it's just a matter of seeing how your players develop. They're at Jacksonville on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern, September 24th on Fox. The following week, they're home against the Pittsburgh Steelers, October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Then they're at Atlanta, October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Whether they win or lose those games, I could see them losing all 3 to those teams. Those teams are all just better teams, even though Atlanta is still kind of in the same boat. I think Atlanta has better pieces around Desmond Ridder to help him out. But Houston and Atlanta, that's going to be a shootout, in my opinion. I think that could be a shootout, and it could go either way, but I still would take Atlanta. The following week, October 15th, Houston is home against the New Orleans Saints, 1 p.m. Eastern. They have a bye week, and then the following week, they're at Carolina, October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. We're just going to have to see with this Texans team. They're rebuilding from the bottom. And over those next 5 games, they may get the Atlanta game. Maybe. I can see them losing to the Saints and even the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers. Yeah. Even I think Carolina has better pieces around him, and they could win that game as a result of that. So that's what I'm going to go by here. But like I said, we're just going to have to see how things shake up, and we'll just see how those teams look down the stretch here. Couple more games to touch on for the Sunday night afternoon slate, and then we'll touch on Sunday night football and also go over the results of Monday night football before closing things out. The Dallas Cowboys defeated the New York Jets 30-10. Zach Wilson had 3 interceptions in that game. In this game, there just wasn't much to talk about. The Dallas Cowboys were just dominant again as they were on defense. And Zach Wilson, he just showed us why people had doubts about what he can do as a football player. He threw, again, 3 interceptions, and all of them were just bad plays. He just didn't read his reads at all. He did have a lone touchdown that looked really good to Garrett Wilson, who had 2 catches for 83 yards, a 68-yard bomb to him. That looked really good. But there just wasn't much else to write home about the rest of the way. Zach Wilson was 12 of 27. 170 yards, and then of course the touchdown I spoke about to Garrett Wilson while having 3 interceptions, and they were just bad interceptions. On the flip side for Dallas, Dak Prescott, he was 31 of 38 for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a touchdown to Jake Ferguson, the tight end, and then he threw a short one to Luke Schoonmaker, who was another tight end. CeeDee Lamb didn't find the end zone, even though he had a pretty solid day. Running the football, Zach Wilson, he was their leading rusher. They only had 64 yards on the ground as a team, and he had 5 carries for 36 yards with a 16-yard rush of those 5. So he had 4 carries for 20 yards to go along with that 16-yard rush. And Breece Hall and Michael Carter and Dalvin Cook, your next 3 running backs, they had a total combined. These 3 guys had a total of 10 carries for 24 yards. Just a rough day for the New York Jets, and again, not much to talk about. Tony Pollard for Dallas had 25 carries for 72 yards. Rico Dowdle also had 7 carries for 26 yards. You had a total of 134 yards on the ground for Dallas, and they were also better receiving the ball. CeeDee Lamb, even though he didn't find the end zone, he had 11 catches for 143 yards. Tony Pollard had 7 catches for 37 yards. All Dallas all the time. They have now outscored their opponents in 2 games, 70-10. Of course, the Giants didn't score, and the Jets had 10 here. So with Dallas, it's just a matter of staying up there with the 49ers as far as I'm concerned. They're at the Arizona Cardinals week 3, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. I see that as a win. They're home for the New England Patriots, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. Week 4, October 1st on Fox. They're probably going to harass Mac Jones and get the win there. Week 5 is very interesting. They're at the San Francisco 49ers. It's 8:20 p.m. Eastern, October 8th. That one's going to be a good one because the 49ers, we'll talk about them a little bit before we end the show. That one's going to be a good one for sure. And I'm really excited to see how Dallas looks against that 49ers offense. Also excited to see how San Francisco's defense looks against the offense for Dallas because Dak Prescott might as well just be reading a newspaper. He hasn't had to really do much against the Giants or the Jets. And I don't see him having to do much against the Cardinals either. I can see that defense harassing Josh Dobbs and making things tough on James Conner and the rest of those pieces on offense. So Dallas's test isn't going to be until the 49ers. That following week for Monday Night Football, they're at the Los Angeles Chargers October 16th at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. But I could see them beating the Chargers too. I can see them beating the Chargers for sure because Justin Herbert is going to have a tough time as well. And if Austin Eckler is still out for that game, yeah, that's going to be tough. They have a bye that following week, and then the next week, week 8, they're home against the Los Angeles Rams, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th on Fox. That's a win. The Dallas Cowboys, they're set up for success. Plain and simple. They are set up for success, and they're definitely going to get it done. The Jets, they're probably going to be playing for a top pick again. If they lose a few more games, I could see a situation where the Jets honestly end up taking a quarterback, even with Aaron Rodgers on your roster, because Zach Wilson is not it. The Jets are home against the New England Patriots, 1 p.m. Eastern, September 24th. That game, I could see the Jets losing that game because, to me, even though he's not much, I would take Mac Jones over Zach Wilson any day of the week. They're home against the Kansas City Chiefs, October 1st, Sunday Night Football game. As I mentioned, that was probably made with the thought in mind of having Aaron Rodgers versus Mahomes. I see the Chiefs taking that one. And then at Denver, week 5, 4:25 p.m. Eastern, October 8th. I could see Denver winning that game too because they have the pieces to harass Zach Wilson. It's just a matter of not giving the game away if you're the Denver Broncos. The Jets are then home against the Philadelphia Eagles, October 15th, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. You have a bye week, week 7, week 7, and then you're you're at the New York Giants, October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern. They play in the same stadium, it's just they're going to change the colors everywhere. So that's still kind of a home game in a sense. So if you're the Jets, keeping pace with your division is not really going to be an issue until we see more games unfold. The Dolphins are going to be the best team in that division at 2-0. The Jets in Buffalo are at 1-1, and New England is 0-2. Where they go from there, we'll have to see. But prognosticating things, the Jets are going to have a rough time. They may end up in last place in that division. The final game that we're talking about during Sunday, during the day, before we get to the night games here in the Monday night games that were played, Washington Commanders go into Denver and defeat the Denver Broncos 35-33. This game should not have gone the way it had. The Denver Broncos and their 2 games have shown in the first half that they could be a good team. It's just a matter of playing the game in the second half and finishing it the way that they need to. That was the issue with this game. For Washington, Sam Howell was 27 of 39 for 299 yards with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But at the same time, Russell Wilson had 18 of 32 for 308 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. This game to me was a situation where Denver gave this game to them. They were up 21-3 in the second quarter, and Washington scored the final 11 points of the second quarter to bring things to within 21-14 at the half. Russell Wilson, again, to me, wasn't the problem, but at the same time, he wasn't the solution. When it's a situation where you have this game the way it is in the first half, you have to play consistent football in the second half as well. Russell Wilson was Denver's leading rusher as well with 6 carries for 56 yards. A lot of those yards that he got was when the pocket would collapse and he took off. Of those 6 carries, 4 of them were that type of situation where he had to just get going because the pocket collapsed and he didn't want to take the sack. Javonte Williams was your next leading receiver with 12 carries for 44 yards. Samaje Perine and Jaleel McLaughlin each only had one carry. Samaje Perine had one carry for 4 yards. Jaleel McLaughlin had one carry for 5 yards, but it was for a touchdown. Looking at Washington as far as them rushing the football, Brian Robinson had a great day with 18 carries for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he had 87 of their 122 yards on the ground. Um, each team had 122 yards on the ground rushing, but Washington was much more effective with what they did with when they were running the football. And looking at the receiving core for Washington, Terry McLaurin had 5 catches for 54 yards and the 1 touchdown. Tight end Logan Thomas, he had 2 catches for 22 yards and a touchdown as well. He left the game here after a hit that was taken from safety Kareem Jackson, who was hit with an unsportsmanlike conduct call for that hit and was actually ejected from the game. So that was Logan Thomas's day, and he was pretty much done. Looking at things on the receiving side for the Denver Broncos, rookie Marvin Mims had 2 catches for 113 yards and a touchdown. One catch was for 53 yards, one catch was for 60 yards. So he has big game ability. And I was actually kind of worried about what he would do coming into this season. But with Tim Patrick getting hurt and with KJ Hamler having his ailment and being off the roster, I honestly feel like Mims is stepping up. I really like Mims a lot. I honestly, what he's doing is what I've been hoping to get from Jerry Jeudy. Plain and simple. Jerry Jeudy only had 3 catches for 25 yards. He had an okay day. The catches that mattered the most to me were from Brandon Johnson. He had 2 catches for 66 yards, and both of his catches were touchdowns. The second touchdown was the one that got the game close, but ultimately Denver fell just short. Russell Wilson threw a Hail Mary with no time left on the clock, and Brandon Johnson caught the ball for the touchdown to make the game 35-33. They then tried for the 2-point conversion, and there was a no call for pass interference in the end zone on Cortland Sutton. They replayed it on the screen, but ultimately there was no call made by the refs. They decided to go on with the game and finish the game. One thing that also jumped out about me in the second half was Russell Wilson. He didn't have any turnovers in the first half, but he had a fumble and an interception in the second half. And I think that's honestly what kind of got Washington in the game. For me, Denver is 0-2, but they're a good 0-2 team if there is such a thing. That sounds silly, but they've lost the 2 games by a combined 3 points. They're at Miami week 3, 1 p.m. Eastern, September 24th. Then they're also at Chicago, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 1st. They have their next 2 games on the road. Miami is looking like a loss because they're showing me that they're the best team in the AFC so far. And at Chicago, I can see that being a win because Chicago, they're a worse 0-2 team than the Broncos to me. Again, 0-2 is 0-2. You haven't won. But the Broncos have shown me glimpses of being a good team. Chicago has a lot of work to do. I haven't seen anything to indicate they're going to be good anytime soon. The New York Jets come into Denver week 5, 4:25 p.m., October 8th, Eastern time on CBS. Then for the Thursday night game, the Kansas City Chiefs are hosting the Denver Broncos, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, October 12th on Amazon Prime. Then the Broncos return home 10 days later to host the Green Bay Packers, 4:25 p.m. Eastern on CBS, October 22nd. So at Miami, they're going to probably lose, but with Chicago and New York, you can get a couple wins right there. So hope is not lost yet on the Broncos. If they find a way to somehow only win one of their next few games, they're going to be in trouble because then they'll be facing Kansas City 2 of the next 3 games. That's going to be tough. So the Broncos, man, we're going to talk about these games, like I said, but it's really hard to say what they're going to be. The Commanders, however, looking at them, they're 2-0 in their division along with Dallas and along with Philly. We expected this from Dallas and Philly, but they didn't expect this from Washington, with the Giants at the bottom at 1-1. The next game, they're home against the Buffalo Bills, September 24th, 1 p.m. Eastern. That game is a pick'em at this point because Washington has shown they can hang. They're at Philadelphia for their first NFC East matchup, October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then Thursday Night Football, they host the Chicago Bears. October 5th, 8 p.m. Eastern on Amazon Prime. So the Washington, they could win two of their next three. And then with Philly having all the problems they have, Washington knows Philly better than anybody except for the Cowboys and Giants, of course. So I could see them taking that game too. Washington is in good shape, and I wouldn't sleep on Washington yet. They're at Atlanta 10 days later after that Chicago game, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Then they're at the New York Giants, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd on CBS. Washington is in good shape, and even if they go 3-2 over the next 5 games, you're still a 5-2 football team. So watch out for those Washington Commanders for sure. I'm definitely saying watch out for the Washington Commanders. We got a couple more games to talk about here before we wrap things up here. Another game to talk about was the Sunday night football matchup here with the Miami Dolphins defeating the New England Patriots 24-17. That game, but it was just too late at that particular time. So that was kind of how that game went as far as that goes. Tua Tagovailoa didn't have the game that he had by any means against the Chargers, but he was still efficient. 21 of 30 for 249 yards with one touchdown and one interception. But they got their game going running the football this week. Running the football was key for Miami, and I'm going to touch on that. Jones on the flip side, running the football was definitely where Miami dominated because with the New England Patriots, they only got 88 yards on the ground from 3 different guys. Ramondre Stevenson did have 15 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown, but Mac Jones was your second leading receiver with 5 catches for 25 yards. That's not going to work. Zeke Elliott had the other 13 yards on the ground through 5 carries. On the flip side, Raheem Mostert definitely got it going with 18 carries for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miami only had 145 yards on the ground, so he was definitely responsible for that. He was a catalyst because they couldn't stop him on the ground, and he chewed up a lot of clock running the football that way. Looking at the receiving side of things here, New England, they had good distribution, but it didn't result in enough points. Devontae Parker had 6 catches for 57 yards, but didn't find the end zone. Tight end Hunter Henry, he had 6 catches for 52 yards and a touchdown. And your other tight end, Mike Gesicki, who you acquired from the Dolphins as a free agent, he had 5 catches for 33 yards. On the flip side, though, Jalen Waddle, he was the leading receiver for Miami with 4 catches for 86 yards, but he didn't find the end zone. Tyreek Hill, he had a pretty good game. It wasn't by any means what he had against the Chargers week 1, but he definitely handled business. 5 catches, 40 yards, and a touchdown. So while the Patriots were able to make sure that he didn't go crazy as far as what he did, as far as his production against the Chargers, Tyreek Hill still found the end zone. So the New England Patriots, they as a whole, they didn't look bad, but they're down. Oh, they're 0-2 in their division, with Miami leading this division at 1-1, and the Jets and Buffalo sitting in the middle at 1-1 for this division. So looking at the Patriots here, even though they're 0-2, let's see what they can do as far as the rest of their schedule. They're at the Jets Sunday, it's September 24th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Then they're at the Cowboys. I could see them getting a win against the Jets, but losing week 4 at the Cowboys, 4:25 Eastern, October 1st. They're home against the Saints, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 8th for their week 5 game. And then after that, they're going to be at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Patriots, to me, 3 of their next games are on the road. 3 of their next 4 games are on the road. They lost both of these games at home. So whether or not they can handle that remains to be seen. And if you're the Miami Dolphins, you're sitting pretty. The Miami Dolphins schedule looks a lot much like success to me because you're home against the Denver Broncos September 24th and you're at Buffalo. They can win at Buffalo, and Denver, I see that as a win. I see that as a dub. So that'll put them at 3-0, possibly 4-0 after the Buffalo game. Then you're home against the Giants and Chargers after that. You know what I mean? I can see those being wins too. The Dolphins are definitely set up for success without that injury bug, of course. So again, the Dolphins are set up for success. We'll just have to see what the Patriots do and just kind of just watch as the season unfolds. Let's talk about the 2 Monday night games before we close things out. There were 2 Monday night football results here. They had 2 Monday night games. They typically only have one, But looking at the schedule, I think this is going to be something that they're going to be trying more often with the two Monday night football games because it kind of gives fans more options and it also hurries along the schedule. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they do that. The first Monday night football game was the New Orleans Saints defeating the Carolina Panthers 20-17 to improve to 2-0 as the Panthers fall to 0-2. And the Pittsburgh Steelers even that game was tough for one major reason, but we'll just touch on the Panthers game a little bit before we get to that. Looking at the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young was 22 of 33 for 153 yards and one touchdown, while Derek Carr was 21 of 36 for 228 yards. He didn't find the end zone, and he did have one. Carol for the New Orleans Saints, Taysom Hill, the Swiss Army knife, had 9 catches for 75 yards. And Tony Jones Jr. was a find for the running backs with 12 carries for 34 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jamal Williams had 9 carries for 29 yards, but did leave the game with an injury. So he didn't really contribute as much as he wanted to. For the receiving, Adam Thielen for the Carolina Panthers did have 7 catches for 54 yards and 1 touchdown, but that kind of came late in the game. And that's what kind of made the game close because this game was 20-10 up until late in the game for the Saints. So I feel like that touchdown just kind of was a garbage time touchdown and it brought things close. Running back Chuba Hubbard was second in receiving with 5 catches for 34 yards. The receiving core didn't really do much for Carolina. On the flip side, with the receiving core for New Orleans, you had Chris Olave with another great performance, 6 catches for 86 yards on 11 targets. Rashid Shaheed, who showed up for this team last week, was targeted 4 times and caught all 4 for 63 yards. They didn't find the end zone in the passing game, but a lot of the catches that were made, those were the catches that were timely and what Derek Carr needed to keep the clock moving. That was what this was for this team. The Carolina Panthers, looking at their schedule over the course of the next 5 games, they are 0-2 at the bottom of their division. But for me, this is a rebuild season. They have surprise teams, but as far as I'm concerned, this team is just looking towards next season. They're at Seattle, September 24th, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. I could see them losing that game, and then they're home for the Minnesota Vikings the following week, October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. That could be another loss as well. They're on the road 2 more games at the Detroit Lions and at the Miami Dolphins on the October 8th and 15th, respectively, 1 p.m. Eastern for each of those games. Those are losses. Again, this is a young football team, and I could see this team going maybe 4-13. We'll just have to see how these games look the rest of the year. But their next winnable game would be after the bye week, October 29th. They're home against the Houston Texans. That's another rookie quarterback that they're going against. So I could see them winning that football game. The Saints, let's look at their schedule here and kind of see how they're good looking here. The Saints, to me, at 2-0, they're at Green Bay and then they're home against Tampa Bay. The Saints lost Jamal Williams to injury. It remains to be seen how long he's going to be out. But as far as I'm concerned here, at Green Bay, that's a pick'em game. We'll just kind of have to see how that shakes out. And home against Tampa, that's a pick'em game too, as far as I'm concerned. They squeaked by week 1 against Tennessee, and they beat Carolina by a field goal. Carolina had a chance late, but they just couldn't execute. So I don't know what the Saints are yet. It remains to be seen as far as what the Saints are. And looking at the schedule, they could possibly go 2-3, 3-2 over these next 5 games. They could go 5-0. They could go 1-4. I just don't really know. But being in the thick of things with the Falcons and with the Buccaneers is definitely what you need to do because, again, the Buccaneers surprise people, and Atlanta is winning football games as well. To close out the last game we're going to talk about here, the Pittsburgh Steelers defeated the Cleveland Browns 26-22 in a game which Cleveland led. But the story of this game, unfortunately, was the unfortunate gruesome knee injury to Nick Chubb. He's expected to miss the rest of the season and what's being reported as multiple torn ligaments. They haven't looked like. You just have to worry about beyond football at this point for Nick Chubb. He had a knee injury very similar to this in which they had to reconstruct his knee when he was with the University of Georgia back in 2015. And to have another devastating injury to that knee again, it's just cause for concern. If you're the Cleveland Browns, Cleveland Browns fall to 1-1. The Steelers improve to 1-1. Deshaun Watson was 22 of 40 for 235 yards, one touchdown, one interception. He was barely above 50% completing the football, while Kenny Pickett was literally at 50% completing the football. 15 of 30, 222 yards, one touchdown, one pick as well. Again, Nick Chubb getting injured was the story of the game because both quarterbacks, they had mediocre play as far as throwing the football and as far as getting it down the field. Jerome Ford, the running back for Cleveland, who came in relief of Nick Chubb and is going to be your starting running back going forward, he had 16 carries for 106 yards. Deshaun Watson was your third leading receiver behind Chubb before he left the game at 6 carries for 22 yards. The versatility that the Cleveland Browns were looking for him just isn't there because when he was with Houston like 2019, 2020, you would see like similar numbers as far as throwing the ball and running the ball. So that's a huge concern for the Cleveland Browns here because you're paying this guy a lot of money and that's why you're paying him. So that's a big deal for them. On the flip side, running the football, Najee Harris had 10 carries for 43 yards. They only had 55 yards as a team on the ground. The 21-yard carry that he had came in the third quarter, kind of when Pittsburgh was starting to get things going. So a lot of the running he had was off of one carry. 21 yards on one carry means that you had 9 carries for 22 yards. The versatility that he possessed in 2021 as a rookie, they're not seeing that this year either. So there's some work to be done in the AFC North as a whole if you look at all 4 teams. As far as the receiving here for the Cleveland Browns, Amari Cooper had 7 catches for 90 yards. David Njoku, the tight end, had 4 catches for 48 yards, but he did have a fumble in the third quarter. Elijah Moore, 3 catches for 36 yards, and Jerome Ford, he had 3 catches for 25 yards and a touchdown. Jerome Ford, you're going to hear that name a lot. He's the new starting running back as a result of Nick Chubb's injury for Cleveland. And if he can contribute anything in receiving and rushing the same way Nick Chubb had in prior years, Cleveland, they're definitely going to be okay. But I won't say they're going to be fine or even great because losing Nick Chubb, that's a loss, no matter how you slice that. On the Pittsburgh side, George Pickens, he had 4 catches for 127 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown was a 71-yard catch, and he was targeted 10 times and only had 4 catches. Jaylen Warren, the backup running back, even though he only contributed 20 yards rushing, he had 4 catches for 66 yards on 6 targets. Jaylen Warren to me looked to be the better back between him and Najee Harris. Najee Harris, if he doesn't get it together, they may be starting Jaylen Warren soon. So I would be on the lookout for that here. The Pittsburgh Steelers, looking at their division, looking at the division as a whole, Baltimore's 2-0, Pittsburgh 1-1, Cleveland 1-1, Cincinnati 0-2. All 4 of those teams they need to get it together. But Cleveland, man, looking at their next 5 games here, just to kind of prognosticate where they're going to be, and we're also going to look at Pittsburgh real quick before we close things out. They're home against Tennessee and home against Baltimore the next couple of weeks before their bye week, and then they're home against San Francisco. All those games are going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern the next few weeks. Being home helps. Tennessee, Baltimore, San Francisco, I could see them winning 2 of those 3 games. They're at Indianapolis, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern, and at Seattle, October 29th, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. If they can come out of that stretch 4-1, 3-2, they'll still be in the mix as a 1-1 football team in their division. But losing Nick Chubb is going to have reverberating effects on that franchise because if they're talking career, if they're talking beyond this season, you can't just find another Nick Chubb anywhere. You just can't. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers on the flip side, as far as their schedule, they're at Las Vegas for Sunday Night Football this Sunday, that's September 24th. They're at Houston October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern. I could see them winning that game. Home against Baltimore October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern, which I think is going to be a dogfight. And then the following week they have a bye. And then the week after that, they're at the Los Angeles Rams, 5 p.m. Eastern, October 26th. Home against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th on CBS. My worry is the offense. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett, he looks pedestrian as far as throwing the ball. Najee Harris is not giving you what he gave you in 2021. That drop off is clearly evident. And then with Pickens, he has big games, but he doesn't have games where he's consistent the whole game. He has a lot of games to me where he's consistent in spots. So the AFC North is going to be a dogfight to the end because you got to consider Joe Burrow struggling for the Cincinnati Bengals, the team that was favored in that division with that calf injury. And Baltimore, how long can they consistently do what they're doing? Because they've got some injuries too. Because this is football. So that wraps up the NFL action here. What'll happen here is on the next broadcast will be on Thursday. We're going to touch on the Thursday night football game, and also try to prognosticate what's going to happen again, and kind of give you kind of a more scenario as how I feel what's going to happen with Sunday. So that's going to wrap up this broadcast of the Hype Show. I appreciate you sticking with me here. This was a longer broadcast because we had to go over all the games. And I didn't broadcast on Sunday, so I had to touch on the Thursday night game as well. So this broadcast was about 15 minutes longer than your normal broadcast. I typically go about 90 minutes with my broadcast. Sometimes it may go a little bit over, but this broadcast had to go a little bit closer to 2 hours because, again, I didn't broadcast on Sunday because I was at the game with the Broncos and Commanders. So I'm going to be touching base with you again on Thursday. We're going to talk about what's going to happen with the Thursday night football game and see how things go there. And then at that point, I'm going to talk to you about the way I feel about week 3 and how the games are going to go for that one. That one's going to be one of those things where we're just going to have to see how things go. But thank you so much here. I appreciate it here. Join me again Thursday. That Thursday night game is the Giants at the 49ers in Santa Clara, Levi Stadium. Amazon Prime, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. I'll remind you again on Thursday for that game. And then, like I said, we'll touch on all the other games coming up. Thank you so much again for joining the Hype Show. I am Big J all day. Thank you so much again. We'll talk soon. You have a good one. Take care.